There is a word on a bomb in the Obsidian Distant Lands special that most people never stop to read. The bomb sits in the foreground of the opening shot, partially buried, one of several nuclear weapons scattered across the post-apocalyptic landscape where the Glass Kingdom will eventually stand. And on the casing, just legible if you pause on it, is the word fission. Not mushroom bomb, not magic weapon, fission. The specific mechanism that makes a nuclear weapon work. The splitting of atoms, the chain reaction, the conversion of mass to energy. The people who made Adventure Time went out of their way to write a real nuclear physics term on a bomb in a background shot of a kid's cartoon. And a Tumblr lore thread, one of the most careful piece-by-piece analyses of the Obsidian episode, noted this and said simply, "We've seen bombs scattered around the land of Oo before, but this is the first time we've seen the word fission, confirming that they are nukes." Confirming. After 7 seasons of context clues and background details and production notes, a single word written on a bomb in a background shot confirmed the thing that anyone paying attention already knew. This is what Adventure Time was always doing with the Mushroom War. It never made a documentary episode. It never had a narrator sit you down and explain the history. It put a real physics term on a bomb in the background and trusted someone to pause and read it and go, "There it is, confirmed." Tonight is about all of it. Every piece of Mushroom War evidence in the show, from the first frame of the opening theme to the most recent entries in the Distant Lands specials. The things in the backgrounds you walk past, the details in the production notes that reframe entire episodes, the specific objects, the specific words, the specific decisions the show made about what kind of world ended to produce the candy-coloured one we know. The complete accounting of everything Adventure Time told us about the war. It never showed us directly. Because here's the thing I keep returning to when I think about how Adventure Time handled the Mushroom War. It's an act of sustained trust. The show trusted that if it put a rusted tank tread in the opening credits, someone would notice. If it put baby shoes in an iceberg, someone would ask whose shoes they were. If it wrote fission on a bomb in a background shot, someone would pause and read it. And people did. The Adventure Time fandom produced some of the most meticulous background detail analysis in the history of animated television. The Mushroom War Theory WordPress blog, the Adventure Time Conspiracies Tumblr, a dedicated wiki section on the war that now runs to thousands of words, cataloguing every artifact, every ruin, every throwaway line of dialogue that adds a piece to the picture. The show trusted that kind of attention, and the attention showed up. Tonight we're doing justice to all of it. Get comfortable. This takes a while, and some of what we're going to talk about is going to hit very differently once you understand what you've been seeing all along. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It keeps us making these for you. That means more than I know how to say. Let's start with the opening, because the opening is where Adventure Time hid its most consistent and most visible piece of Mushroom War documentation. 3 seconds before every episode. Before Finn and Jake go on their adventure. Before the Candy Kingdom. Before the music and the colour and the warmth. 3 seconds of grey, devastated landscape. The Adventure Time. Wiki's Mushroom War article catalogues what's visible in those 3 seconds with the kind of attention it deserves. An opening shot showing various weapons and technological debris, including greyed land and undetonated nuclear missiles lying around. A pair of headphones hanging on a dead tree. Princess Bubblegum's amulet hanging from a tree, which is its own thing we'll get to. A severed arm, possibly belonging to Shoko, and an axe stuck in a tree. A broken television from the 21st century in the foreground. An object resembling a VHS tape near the TV. An unknown creature's skull. An asphalt road visible above Marceline's cave. A drive shaft and 2 axles to the right of the road. And the remains of a tank's tread in the centre of the shot. That's 3 seconds. 3 seconds of the opening title sequence, which plays before every episode, which most people stop consciously seeing after their 3rd viewing, because the brain learns to skip past familiar things. 3 seconds that contain undetonated nuclear missiles, a tank, military debris, a severed arm that may belong to Finn's own past life, and Princess Bubblegum's amulet hanging from a dead tree. The opening is a diorama of everything the show is built on, compressed into 3 seconds presented before every adventure trusted to eventually be seen. The arm, the wiki says, possibly belonging to Shoko. Shoko is Finn's past life, the thief we meet in the vault, who fell into the radioactive river during the early construction of the Candy Kingdom. Her body became the fertilizer for the tree that would grow into Finn's treehouse. But an arm reaching upward out of a tree trunk in the opening, reaching for a sky that has become pink and cheerful, that's a specific image of survival and loss that the show put in front of you every single episode. Something that was buried when the world ended. Still reaching, still there. 1,000 years of ooh, and the arm is still reaching. Now I want to establish the basic parameters of the war, because we need a foundation before we can go through the details properly. The Adventure Time, Wiki's Mushroom War entry, describes it as an apocalyptic event that occurred roughly 1,000 years before Adventure Time. The war was nuclear. The insurrection. Central wiki on the war is specific. Although the cause of the war remains unknown, its name suggests that nuclear weapons were heavily used during the conflict, and thus was most likely World War III. The word mushroom refers to the characteristic mushroom cloud of nuclear detonations. The timing. This is where the fandom's careful work becomes genuinely impressive. The Adventure Time Conspiracy. Tumblr blog, Adventure Time Conspiracies, did a detailed reconstruction of the war's earliest possible date using cultural references embedded in the show. The Insurrection Central Wiki synthesizes this work. The Ice King sings the Cheers theme in Simon and Marcy. Cheers premiered in 1982. The lower bound moves to 1985 because of the Mr. Belvedere theme in Everything Stays. Then, a Generation 3 iMac computer appears in the Lich. iMac G. 3 computers were available to mass consumers from 1998 onward. The Conspiracy Tumblr confirmed this reading specifically, noting the iMac was a key subject in the scene and too specific of an artifact to remove it from Adventure Time's canon. Then the Obsidian special and the episode Elemental pushed the timeline even further. The Adventure Time Conspiracies Tumblr blog documented this precisely. Pym pulls her own pre-war phone out of her pocket to take a picture of Princess Bubblegum before observing that her phone needs a charge. The blog notes that camera phones didn't come to the United States until November 2002 and were popular by the end of 2003, meaning the war happened after that. The Insurrection Central wiki concludes, modern smartphones are seen in Patient Street, Pym's flashback of the human era. In Elemental, this could indicate that the Great Mushroom War began sometime after the 2000s. Let that sit for a second. The Mushroom War happened in a world that had smartphones. Not a world diverged from ours a century ago, not a science fiction future. A world where people had the phones that most of you reading this have right now. The show was telling you this through the episode Elemental in a flashback background detail, trusting that someone would pause on Patient Street Pym's phone and cross-reference the manufacturing date. Someone did. And the conclusion they reached is that the war happened, if Adventure Time's world is ours, uncomfortably recently. The mushroom bomb itself. The Adventure Time wiki on the mushroom bomb is specific. The mushroom bomb was a mutagenic doomsday weapon, constructed sometime before the Mushroom War. The bomb was dropped on a major city somewhere in North America, detonating above or in a subway station. And the mushroom bomb has an appearance similar to that of real-life Cold War era nuclear bombs, as well as that of the Fat Man bomb, which was detonated during World War II. The Fat Man, the plutonium bomb that destroyed Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945, killing somewhere between 40,000 and 80,000 people instantly. The show visually based its world-ending weapon on the specific design of the bomb that killed Nagasaki. This is not a generic nuclear weapon aesthetic. The Fat Man has a distinctive, rounded, lens-shaped design that is different from the more streamlined little boy dropped on Hiroshima. The show chose the Fat Man specifically. Every time you see the mushroom bomb in Adventure Time, you're looking at a stylized version of one of the two weapons ever deployed in combat against a human population. And the cloud. The mushroom bomb wiki continues. The bomb's cloud is also similar in shape to those created by real-world nuclear weapons, with its distinctive mushroom shape. However, this cloud is different in that it glows a deep green and is made up of many howling, skull-shaped faces. Green, howling, skull-shaped. The cloud of the mushroom bomb is the Lich's essence made visible, the Golb-connected entity that existed in the Earth's geology since the Catalyst Comet impact 65 million years ago, now released. The bomb detonated over whatever the Lich's essence was stored in, releasing it into the world. The cloud isn't just fire and debris, it's a cosmic entity, screaming as it's given a new body. The detonation site. The Adventure Time. Wiki states, the base of the Lich's power is a ruined subway station with deserted trains and littered with human skeletons scattered on the floor as if they had been killed that very moment around the station. Character designer Andy Ristaino has stated that these skeletons were supposed to feel like they were East Coast commuters, all bundled up for winter. Outside the station is what appears to be a nuclear missile. There are also ruins of buildings in the background. The subway and its platforms are like those in New York or New Jersey. East Coast commuters, bundled up for winter. This is the most human detail in the show's entire mythological framework. Not the cosmic entity, not the ancient comet impact, not the magical resonance of the mutagenic field. The people who died when the bomb went off were commuters. They were on their way to work or coming home on a winter morning or evening, dressed for the cold. They were in a New York or New Jersey style subway station. The trains were running, and then they weren't. Andy Ristaino didn't have to specify this. He could have left the skeletons as generic, post-apocalyptic imagery. He chose to specify East Coast commuters, all bundled up for winter, because the specificity matters. These were people in the middle of ordinary lives. The horror of the Mushroom War is not in its cosmic scale, it's in the winter coats. The Obsidian Lore thread on Tumblr noticed an additional detail in the Obsidian Fallout bunker. Banknotes being used as toilet paper. Money had become worthless so fast that the survivors in the bunker used currency as bathroom paper. The economic collapse was total and immediate. The thing that organised human society, money, value, the system of exchange, was degraded to its most basic physical function within days or weeks of the war beginning. Someone in the bunker, in the immediate aftermath, grabbed a stack of bills and put them in the bathroom, because paper was useful, and bills were paper, and currency was not. Someone else found this acceptable. The whole bunker agreed. The bunker. Let me spend real time on the Fallout bunker, from Obsidian, because the Adventure Time Wiki's dedicated entry on it contains detail that tells a complete story. The Fallout bunker article states, before or during the Mushroom War, this shelter was created to house human survivors. Elise possessed a keycard that granted her access to this bunker, implying she used to reside here. For some unknown reason, all the inhabitants died, and their skeletal remains still reside there. The interior, per the wiki, contains posters on the walls, food rations, a bed with a skeleton in it, and markings written on the wall next to it. A skeleton sitting at a table of monitoring screens, a safe, a shower with save water written on its wall, a skeleton sitting on a toilet, a gas mask, another desk with monitoring screens with a skeleton sitting at it, and two skeletons sitting at a table in the middle of the room. On the ceiling, the word survive, written in red. Survive, written in red on the ceiling of a bunker that nobody survived. The people who built it, who stocked it, who installed the monitoring screens and the shower and the food rations, who made it watertight and radiation resistant. They wrote survive on the ceiling, and then they all died anyway. All of them. The blast door is open when Marceline arrives, which the wiki notes, without resolving the question of why. Someone opened it. Someone opened the door, from the inside, or the outside, or the door malfunctioned, and whatever was outside came in, and the people who had done everything right died anyway. The Adventure Time. Wiki on Elise notes, the fate of the skeletons of the other humans inside the clubhouse is likely from the same illness Elise was suffering. Radiation sickness. The same thing killing Elise outside killed the people inside the bunker. The shelter failed. The radiation got through. Every person in it died of the same illness that was killing Marceline's mother in the desert. They just died inside, in a sealed room with survive written on the ceiling, while Marceline sat in the desert, waiting for her mother to come back. Elise. I want to give Elise the full attention she deserves, because she is, across the entire run of the show, the character who makes the Mushroom War most personal and most specific. She appears in two contexts: flashback in Everything Stays and flashback in Obsidian. The information across both appearances paints a portrait of a specific kind of person surviving a specific kind of catastrophe. The Mushroom War wiki entry confirms Elise is shown to be deathly ill, heavily implied to be radiation poisoning from the nuclear fallout. Eventually, she sends Marceline away to find the shelter herself, as she does not want her to watch her mother die. The Obsidian wiki entry on the episode describes the recorded message Marceline eventually finds. It revealed that Elise was expecting Marceline to be inside the secret bunker, why she yelled at her, why Marceline had to be on her own from now on, and that Elise assured her that the world won't change her, because Marceline has a good heart. Elise then says, "I love you," to Marceline, hoping that she can forgive her for what she has done, and then succumbs to her sickness, ending the message. She died recording the message. The recording ends with her dying. Marceline finds it 1,000 years later and hears her mother die in real time. Elise's last words were recorded on an answering machine in a fallout bunker, and her daughter discovered them in the present day of the show, a millennium later, still waiting on a blinking red light. The Obsidian Lore Tumblr thread adds a nice little timeline detail. Marceline, travelling with her mother for a while, explains the awkward 2-year gap between the Mushroom War and the events of Simon and Marcy. The show's timeline has Marceline alone in the immediate post-war period before Simon finds her. Obsidian fills in that gap. She wasn't alone immediately. She was with Elise. They travelled together. They looked for the bunker together. Elise died. And then Marceline was alone. The same lore thread catches a detail about the bunker itself. The fact that humans survived long enough to construct a whole Fallout-style bunker confirms that the near extinction of humanity wasn't a quick process. The bunker exists. People built it before or during the war with the expectation of surviving. The war didn't kill everyone instantly. There was time, weeks, months, possibly longer, during which people could prepare, could build, could stock supplies, and install monitoring screens and write survive on the ceiling. The end of human civilization was not instantaneous. It was a process. People tried to outrun it, and most of them couldn't. The Obsidian Lore thread also catches something about the RV. The Mushroom War wiki confirms a pre-war RV appears at the end of the episode, which resembles a modified 1977 RAF2 203 Latvia minibus, a specific make and model. 1977 RAF 2203 Latvia, a Soviet-era Latvian minibus. This places Elise and Marceline's RV as a real vehicle, from a real country, from a specific year. Someone researched Soviet-era vehicles to put a specific van in the background of a Distant Lands special. The van is a 1977 Latvian minibus. It is sitting in the desert that will become the Glass Kingdom. Elise and Marceline lived in a 1977 Soviet-era Latvian minibus in the desert during the immediate post-nuclear apocalypse period. Now let me trace the war's documentation through the show's early episodes, the ones that built the foundation before any of this was fully articulated. Because the remarkable thing about Adventure Time's Mushroom War documentation is how early it started and how consistent it was. Tree Trunks, Season 1, Episode 4, aired April 19th, 2010, one of the show's very first episodes. The traffic signs in the evil forest have mutated into sign zombies. The Adventure Time wiki notes, traffic signs, which have since somehow mutated into sign zombies. It is unknown how this has happened. It is unknown how a road sign became a living zombie creature. The implication the show is building toward, though it doesn't name it in this episode, the mutagenic field from the mushroom bomb was broad enough and persistent enough to animate inanimate objects. The road signs of the old world, installed to direct traffic through a civilization that no longer exists, became living things. They became undead living things, shuffling through the evil forest, because the mutagenic fallout found them there and changed them. And nobody knows how, because nobody alive remembers when it happened. And the show is in the first weeks of its run, and it's not going to explain this for another several seasons. Business Time, Season 1, Episode 8. The first major artifact episode. The Adventure Time Wiki. Ancient artifacts frozen in icebergs, including computers, a bike, baby shoes, and the businessmen. When the businessmen try to remember where they came from, it seems to cause them immense pain. Baby shoes, frozen in an iceberg. This is the detail that tends to hit people the hardest when they stop and think about it. A pair of baby shoes, preserved in ice for close to 1,000 years, alongside computers and bicycles and 4 businessmen who are in pain when they try to remember their own past. The baby shoes belonged to an infant. The infant had parents. The parents had a life that included buying shoes for a baby. When the war came, when the iceberg formed, whatever chain of events led to 4 businessmen and a baby's shoes being frozen together, the shoes were in the iceberg. The baby, presumably, was not. The parents, presumably, were not. The shoes survived. The shoes are the only thing left of that family. And they are in an iceberg. And Finn and Jake walk past them. And the episode continues. The businessmen themselves, when they try to remember where they came from, it seems to cause them immense pain. The memory of the pre-war world causes physical pain to people who are alive in it. This is not played for tragedy in business time. It's a detail in a comedy episode about businessmen trying to take over Finn and Jake's lives. But what it tells you, the before is so far removed from the after that remembering it produces suffering. The gap between the world the businessmen came from and the world they woke up into is so enormous that the cognitive attempt to bridge it hurts. My 2 favourite people, Season 1, Episode 13, The Adventure Time Wiki. When Finn and Lady Rainicorn confront Jake and Tiffany, the bottoms of upturned cars can be seen in the ground. Jake also uses a military issue phone and headset. Military issue. Jake has a military-grade communications device. Where did he get it? The show doesn't explain. The military equipments of the pre-war world is scattered through the landscape of Ooo in quantity sufficient that Jake can just have a military headset and it's not remarkable. The Witch's Garden, Season 2, Episode 3. The River of Junk. The Adventure Time Wiki describes it. Essentially, a river of mundane pre-war garbage. A car door can also be spotted near the River of Junk. A river that flows with the objects of the old world. Car doors and whatever else was in people's lives when everything ended. Gathered by water into a current, carried downstream for 1,000 years. The River of Junk is the old world's possessions in motion. Its objects still moving through the landscape long after the people who own them stop moving. The car door flows past and nobody in the episode stops to look at it. Ocean of Fear, Season 2, Episode 13. The most complete single episode documentation of what the nuclear aftermath did to Oo's geography. The Adventure Time Wiki. Underwater city ruins and vehicles appear, and a brief scene shows a damaged aircraft carrier and a stranded tank. An even briefer scene depicts 2 dead bodies on a couch in the remains of a pre-war living room. Finn and Jake also take to the depths in a submarine which contains a fire extinguisher, which is most likely from before the war. One can see the remaining tops of cars while they are floating over what might have been an ancient road. The Mushroom War science fictional blog analysis adds, all this would seem to imply that sea levels have risen significantly since the war, which would also explain the world's altered geography, and the island-like nature of Ooo. The people on the couch. 2 dead bodies on a couch in the remains of a pre-war living room. They were in their living room. They were on the couch when the sea level rose over their building, when the tsunami or the flooding or whatever mechanism brought the ocean to their window reached them. They were on their couch. The arrangement of their bodies, still on the furniture, suggests they did not have time to move, or did not try to. They were sitting on their couch when the water came in. The room they lived in has been underwater for close to 1,000 years, and Finn and Jake swim through it in a submarine. And the episode continues. The aircraft carrier, a stranded aircraft carrier in the underwater ruins. Aircraft carriers are among the largest warships ever built. They displace tens of thousands of tons. They carry dozens of warplanes. They are the primary power projection tool of modern naval warfare. This one is at the bottom of the ocean, stranded on a ruined building, its hull visible through the murky water. The war was large enough to sink aircraft carriers. The war involved naval combat, or at least naval deployments. The carrier got close enough to where the city is that it sank in the same waters. And now it is part of the landscape, enormous and rusted and unremarked upon by the characters swimming past it. City of Thieves, Season 1, Episode 14. The Adventure Time. Wiki. When Finn and Jake are in Penny's tent, a double-barrel shotgun can be seen sitting among a pile of gold coins, and a Thompson submachine gun can also be seen in the background. A Thompson submachine gun. The Tommy gun, the weapon associated with American organised crime in the 1920s and 1930s, and also widely used in World War II. In the 21st century, Thompson submachine guns are primarily collector's items. You don't typically encounter one in active use, but one is in Penny's tent in Adventure Time, mixed into a pile of gold coins as loot. The war scattered firearms across the landscape. 1,000 years later, they are treasure. Susan Strong, Season 1, Episode 26. The Human Tribe. The Adventure Time Mushroom War Theory. Blog notes. The Human tribe live in the ruins of either an underground city or a bunker that failed at its purpose. In the storyboard, a warning reading Biohazard Danger appears on the hatch, although this was cut from the episode. The biohazard warning was cut. The explicit statement that the Hayuman's home was a biohazard containment site was deemed too much for the episode and removed. But the information got in through other means. The Hayuman's mutations, their underground home, the specific quality of their existence as humans who stayed in the nuclear landscape and changed. The biohazard warning was cut and the mutation remained, and anyone looking at the humans could see that the warning was warranted whether or not they saw the storyboard. Susan Strong herself, and the question of whether she's human or human. The show uses her as the point where the two categories blur. She's bigger than standard humans. She has more capacity. She has a connection to Finn that feels like species recognition. The question of whether she's human or mutated human is a question of how far the radiation went, how much it changed, and where the line between human and former human gets drawn. The show doesn't give a clean answer, because the real answer, radiation, doesn't produce binary outcomes, doesn't have a clean answer either. Death in Bloom, Season 2, Episode 16. The Adventure Time Mushroom War Theory. Blog. Debris of civilization, including numerous police vehicles, in the land of the dead, and crashed UFOs. Police cars in the land of the dead. The police who drove them are there too, presumably. The law enforcement of the pre-war world is in the dead worlds with their vehicles, having died in the line of duty or off it, their cars preserved alongside them as the objects most associated with their identities when they died, and crashed UFOs, which opens its own question about whether the war involved non-human actors or whether the UFOs are just misidentified pre-war aircraft. Mortal Folly, Season 2, Episodes 24 and 25. The Lich's Well of Power. The subway station. Andy Ristino's confirmation. We've covered this. But let me add what the Mushroom War wiki says about the visual of the episode title card. Per the Mushroom War fandom article, the title card for Mortal Folly is reminiscent of a mushroom cloud. The show put a mushroom cloud in the title card for the episode that deals most directly with the Lich's power. And in Mortal Recoil, when Finn explains what he was giving possessed Princess Bubblegum, when Finn is telling Jake what he was given possessed Princess Bubblegum, he says plutonium, which is often a core element in nuclear bombs. Plutonium, the specific radioactive material used in the Fat Man bomb and in most modern nuclear weapons. Finn mentions plutonium casually in a medical context. The material that ended the war is available enough 1,000 years later to be a plot-adjacent detail. Morituri te Salutamus, Season 3, Episode 20. The Adventure Time wiki. The destroyed arena is most likely the Colosseum in Italy, from before the Great Mushroom War. The Colosseum, built by the Romans in 70 to 80 AD, it survived 2,000 years of human civilization and is still partially standing in our world. In Adventure Time, it survived the Mushroom War in a damaged but structurally present form, and is now used by ants for gladiatorial combat. The most famous ancient monument in the Western world is an ant arena. The history it accumulated, every emperor who watched games there, every century of tourism, every architectural preservation effort, led to a world where ants use it to fight people who wander in. The Silent King, Season 1, Episode 19. The Mushroom War Theory blog. The storyboard for The Silent King contains the first time the Mushroom War is mentioned, by name in the series, heard when Gummy is reading from the rulebook. However, this line was cut from the actual episode. The war's first named appearance in the show was cut before the episode aired. The naming was delayed, strategically or otherwise, until the audience had been given enough context for the name to land properly. For 19 episodes, the war existed without a name in the show's text. It was in the background, and the details, and the ruins, but nobody said Mushroom War. When they finally wrote it in the storyboard for episode 19, they cut it. The name waited. Memory of a Memory, Season 3, Episode 3. Marceline's childhood memories, seen by Finn and Jake as they move through her past. The Mushroom War wiki. Hudson has a flashback of Hudson and a young Marceline from the aftermath of the Mushroom War. Hudson Abadir appears in post-war ruins. The Lord of the Nightosphere, the demon who rules a hell dimension, was present in the aftermath of the Mushroom War. He was there. He and Marceline were together in the immediate post-war period, before the Fry Song incident that strained their relationship. The war happened while Hudson was in on ear the Adventure Time. Fanon Wiki speculates that he may have been in the Nightosphere when the mushroom bomb was dropped, but the flashback, in memory of a memory, places him in the post-war ruins with young Marceline. He survived it. He was there. Holly Jolly Secrets, Part 2, Season 3, Episodes 21 and 22. The Video Diary, The Mushroom War Fanon Wiki. In Holly Jolly Secrets Part 2, one of Simon Petrikov's video diaries shows a plane flying outside his window. Although the scenery outside his window indicates no sign of devastation, it can be inferred that the war had just started, and the plane is in fact a warplane. Simon is recording himself in his apartment. Through the window behind him, a plane crosses the sky. The scenery shows no devastation. His apartment is intact. His neighbourhood is intact. The war has not yet reached the physical point of destroying buildings. But the plane is a bomber. The war has started. The bombs haven't fallen yet. Simon, documenting his own psychological deterioration, doesn't look out the window. He's more concerned with what's happening inside his head. The war is beginning, visible through the apartment window, and Simon doesn't see it because he's looking inward. The Real You, Season 2, Episode 20, The Adventure Time Mushroom War Theory. Blog, a shot of Earth appears, and a huge chunk of it is missing. The missing piece of Earth could have been a result of the Great Mushroom War. The planet has a visible wound from space. Whatever caused it? Catalyst comet impact, mushroom bomb, or some combination of both. The Earth is visibly damaged when viewed from outside it. Who exists on a planet with a chunk missing? The characters live on this planet without discussing it, because from the surface you can't see the missing piece, but from space it's visible. The planet was hurt. Now let me get into the farm world material, because Finn the human and Jake the dog are the most complete single source of Mushroom War information in the show, and they deserve extended treatment. The farm world timeline, created when Finn wishes the Lich never existed, shows us the specific moment Simon Petrikov intervened with the bomb. The TV tropes, timeline entry. Simon Petrikov uses the powers of his ice crown to stop the mushroom bomb from detonating, and he dies as he gets crushed by the bomb's weight. The crown near Simon's corpse kept the bomb frozen for the next 1,000 years. The Adventure Time wiki on the farm world timeline. The enraged ice crown unleashes an ice age upon the Earth, but humanity thrives in a less advanced state for 600 years. The crown mourns Simon for 400 years in the farm world. 400 years of global ice age as a magical artifact's expression of grief. And then the ice age lifted, and humanity built itself back up over the next 600 years into a state that is less advanced than the pre-war world but functioning. The farm world shows you what happens when the mutagenic bomb doesn't go off. Humans survive, reduced, but they survive. No candy people, no rainicorns from the crystal dimension, colonising the mainland, no magic of the scale Ooh has, just humans in a degraded world still there. The Insurrection Central wiki provides the specific consequence. As the land and its inhabitants were not irradiated from nuclear fallout in this timeline, humanity managed to remain the dominant species on the planet. The mushroom bomb's mutagenic field is what created the non-human species of Ooo. Without it, humans remain dominant. The entire ecology of Adventure Time, every candy person, every slime person, every fire person, every species that isn't human or pre-war creature exists because of one specific weapon. Remove the weapon, remove the world. Farm World Marceline. She was there. She watched Simon stop the bomb. She guarded his body and the frozen bomb for 600 years after the Crown's Ice Age lifted. 1,000 years total of vigil. The Adventure Time. Wiki on Farm World. Simon Petrikov describes her when Farmworld Finn finds her. Ancient, barely mobile, still refusing to let anyone touch the crown. She tells Finn, "I'm 1,000 years old, and this is my crown." Not because she wears it, because she guards it. Because the person who wore it gave everything for the world, and she was the person who kept that fact alive when the world forgot. The Mushroom War Wiki on the BM O Distant Lands episode adds another piece. In BMO, CGO explains to BMO that Hugo and his inner circle came from Earth to escape a war, unnamed but clearly referring to the Mushroom War, and shows a depiction of the explosion that created the massive crater on Earth, together with 2 large nuclear detonations in different parts of the planet. 2 large nuclear detonations in different parts of the planet. The explosion that created the crater, larger than the 2 other detonations, described as an energy bomb, and then 2 additional explosions elsewhere. The Mushroom War involved at minimum 3 major detonations, documented in the BMO special in different parts of the planet. This was not a single bomb dropped on a single city. This was multiple weapons across a global exchange. The subway station commuters in New York or New Jersey were not the only ones. Whatever happened across the ocean, wherever the 2nd and 3rd explosions hit, those commuters existed too, with their own winter coats and their own destinations and their own lives that ended mid-journey. Everything Stays, the Stakes mini-series. The Insurrection Central Wiki. In Everything Stays, it is stated that some years following the initial aftermath of the war, a major climate change developed, implied to have been a result of the war and the dropping of the bomb. Having detected abnormal atmospheric readings, Two Bread, Tom's tribe of humans, sailed away from their makeshift forest settlement in a renovated freighter in search of a safer place to thrive. Nuclear winter. The dust and debris thrown into the upper atmosphere by the nuclear exchange, blocking sunlight, dropping temperatures, collapsing agriculture. Two Bread Tom's tribe detects the atmospheric change coming and makes a decision. Leave. They had a freighter, modified and provisioned. They sailed away. The tribe that sings Mr. Belvedere by a campfire and makes a deliberate choice to seek somewhere better. They are the seed of the human civilization that will eventually produce Finn's biological mother, Minerva, on the island. The Adventure Time canonical timeline gives us a specific sequence of events post-war. 1 year AMW, Marceline and her mother, Elise, wander around the post-apocalyptic world until Elise dies from an unnamed illness. 5 years AMW, Simon Petrikov adopts a half-demon girl, Marceline, and raises her in the new post-apocalyptic world until he's forced to abandon her as a result of his eroding sanity, eventually becoming Ice King. 10 years AMW, Marceline is left under the care of her father before their relationship is strained, from Hudson eating her fries. 15 years AMW. 2 Bread. Tom leads a tribe of surviving humans into a freighter. This timeline is the human story of the first 15 years after the bomb. Year 1. A little girl loses her mother to radiation sickness. Year 5. A man who is losing his mind to a magic crown finds the little girl crying and tries to be a father to her for 5 years. Year 10. The little girl is abandoned again to the care of a demon who eats her fries and doesn't notice when she cries. Year 15. The last organised human community sails away. By year 15, Marceline is essentially alone. The organised human presence in Ooo has departed. The world she will occupy for the next 900 and some years is the world left after all of that. Now, I want to trace the war's presence in some of the less discussed episodes, because the documentation goes much further than the obvious ones. Web Weirdos, Season 3, Episode 21. The Mushroom War Theory blog, the piece of wall that Jake and Finn bounce off of when doing stunts, seems to have rebar. And when Ed goes to find Barb a present in the forest, he passes a derelict vehicle in the background, and by the dead night, you can see an electronic panel on the damaged wall to the left. Rebar and electronic panels in a forest. The forest has grown through and around the remains of a building, structural steel reinforcement visible in a piece of broken wall, an electronic control panel still attached to a damaged surface. The forest doesn't care. Trees grew where concrete cracked. Roots split foundations. 1,000 years of growth made the ruins part of the landscape. Daddy's Little Monster, Season 4, Episode 4. The Mushroom War Theory blog. Further reference to the Mushroom War is found as magnetic tourist plates stuck onto Hudson Abadir's kitchen cabinets. The plates are for Vegas, Orlando, and Arizona. Hudson Abadir, Lord of the Nightosphere, has tourist refrigerator magnets from Las Vegas, Orlando, and Arizona on his kitchen cabinets. These are the kind of magnets you buy at gift shops in airports and tourist traps. Someone, presumably Hudson himself, or perhaps Elise when she was with him, bought magnets in Vegas, Orlando, and Arizona and put them on the fridge. The demon lord of a hell dimension has human souvenirs from pre-war American tourist destinations on his kitchen appliances. The war didn't erase those magnets. They survived. In Your Footsteps, Season 4, Episode 17. The Mushroom War Theory blog. Ruined buildings can be seen rising out of the forest. Finn and Jake were walking around at night. The buildings are still rising out of the forest. 1,000 years of nature, reclaiming the ruins, and the buildings are still structurally present enough to be visible above the tree line. The steel and concrete of the pre-war world was built to last, and it has lasted in the specific way of things that outlast their purposes. Still standing, no longer meaningful, absorbed into the forest that grew up around them. Princess Monster Wife, Season 4, Episode 8. The Mushroom War Theory blog. A picture of a city in winter can be seen in the Ice King's room. A picture of a city in winter in the Ice King's room. Simon kept something from the before. A picture of a city in winter, possibly the city he lived in, possibly a generic winter cityscape, possibly something he found, is on his wall, in his ice castle, after 1,000 years. He doesn't know why it's important. He probably doesn't remember choosing it. But it's there. The Ice King's room contains a picture of the world that made him. another 5 more short Graybles. Season 5, Episode 12. The Adventure Time. Wiki. The DVDs that the Ice King has seem to be from before the Mushroom War, due to the fact that they have human actors. The Ice King has DVDs of movies from the pre-war world, movies with human actors, movies from a film industry that no longer exists. He watches them. He collected them during the 1,000 years he's been alive in the post-war world, or found them in the ruins, or kept them from before. The Ice King has a movie collection from civilization that ended. He probably doesn't fully know that. He watches movies with human actors, and something in the Crown's corruption doesn't register that humans are gone. Betty, Season 5, Episode 48. The Simon creates a portal sequence. The Adventure Time. Wiki. Simon creates a portal that jumps back to the time immediately before the Mushroom War to say goodbye to Betty. Simon sees the world just before the bomb fell. The world that Betty existed in. The world he existed in before he found the crown. And he has to leave it and come back to the present. He reaches toward what was, and the portal closes, and he returns to what is. This is the show's most direct character experience of the Mushroom War's temporal reality, someone who was alive before it, looking back at the before and not being able to stay. The Vault, Season 5, Episode 34. The Insurrection Central Wiki. Only a few signs of the nuclear devastation remained in Ao. One example was in the episode The Vault, where Shoko helps Princess Bubblegum establish her new kingdom by covering up an irradiated river at the site of the Candy Castle. The river. The radioactive river under the Candy Kingdom. We discussed this in the Dark Lore video, but I want to revisit it here in the context of the war's documentation, because it's a specific piece of nuclear aftermath that is still, in the present of the show, active. The river is still radioactive enough that Bubblegum needed to cover it during the Candy Kingdom's founding. That founding was several hundred years after the war. Several hundred years of radioactive decay later, the river is still contaminated enough to require covering. This is the specific reality of plutonium, 239's half-life, 24,100 years. Whatever isotopes the mushroom bomb produced, they are not finished with the Earth yet. The Candy Kingdom is built over material that will be dangerous for longer than human civilization has yet existed. Sons of Mars, Season 4, Episode 23. The Penny. The Mushroom War. For non-wiki notes, in Sons of Mars, when Abraham Lincoln offers Death a penny with a production date reading 20XXD, minted in Denver, with "In XXD we trust" on it, the letters obscured by moss. The 20XX, the deliberate obscuring of the specific year with plant growth, but the confirmation that it was minted in the 21st century in Denver, Colorado. Lincoln has a 21st century Denver penny. He uses it to pay death for Jake's soul. This coin was in a Denver mint sometime in the 2000-somethings, and it ended up in Abraham Lincoln's possession on Mars. And it was still legal tender for cosmic transactions a millennium later. Marceline's Closet, Season 3, Episode 18. The first time the war is named by name in the aired episodes of the show. The Mushroom War Wiki. If one clicks on the radio in Marceline's house, Jake states that they stopped making these before the Great Mushroom War. They stopped making these before the Great Mushroom War. That's how the war enters the show's dialogue. Not as a dramatic revelation, not as an expository flashback, but as a casual explanation for why a radio is old. Jake knows the term. The Candy people apparently know it. The phrase is part of Ooh's shared cultural vocabulary. The historical reference point that everyone uses without fully knowing what it refers to. Like someone saying, they stopped making these before the war. Everyone knows which war, or at least that there was one. Now let me think about what the show was doing by distributing all of this information the way it did. The Mushroom War has no dedicated episode. It has never been the explicit subject of a single mainline adventure. Every piece of information came through background details, flashbacks embedded in episodes about something else, throwaway lines of dialogue, production confirmations from artists like Andy Ristaino. The documentation is in the margins of hundreds of episodes across 10 seasons. This is not an accident. This is not laziness or disorganisation. This is a specific creative decision. The war is present in the world, the way history is present in the real world. You don't encounter your world's history through dedicated educational segments. You encounter it in old buildings and inherited objects, and grandparents' stories, and the specific shapes of streets that were once something else. The ruins are just part of the landscape. The baby shoes are just frozen in the iceberg. The river of junk is just what the river contains. History is embedded in the geography and the objects and the occasional reference that requires some context to fully register. The show taught its audience to read that kind of history by consistently, episode after episode, putting the war in the background. It trained the attentive viewer to look at backgrounds differently. Once you know to look for the war, you see it everywhere. Once you've noticed the baby shoes and the aircraft carrier and the winter coats on the subway skeletons, the world of Ooh is denser. It is more real. It has a before that you can feel pressing through the after, and the specifically uncomfortable implication of the timeline evidence, the iMac, the camera phones, Patient Street Pim's smartphone, is that the before is our world, or something very close to it. The baby shoes in the iceberg belong to someone in a world that had smartphones. The commuters bundled up for winter in the New York subway were commuters in a world that looked like our world. The people on the couch in what is now the ocean were watching television in a room equipped with appliances from our century. The show is a thought experiment. It has always been a thought experiment. What happens if this world, our world, the one with iMacs and camera phones and tourist magnets from Las Vegas, ended? What would be left 1,000 years later? What would survive? Baby shoes in icebergs, tourist magnets on a demon's fridge, a radio that stopped being made before the war, a television broken in the opening shot, an arm reaching upward from a tree trunk toward a sky that's gone pink and cheerful over everything that was lost. That's the answer Adventure Time was always giving. This is what survives. Small things, objects, the shapes of buildings, too structurally sound to collapse, even after centuries. The weapons that didn't detonate, the rivers that the bombs contaminated, the specific postures of people caught mid-life by something they didn't see coming. And also life, new life, strange life, life that could not have existed in the world before the bomb, now fills every inch of a world remade by what the bomb released. The candy people, the rainicorns, the slime people, the fire people, the sign zombies, shuffling through a forest where traffic signs used to direct cars to destinations that no longer exist. All of them are the bomb's consequence, given form and personality, and culture and kingdoms. All of them are what happens when something terrible completely resets the rules, and the new rules turn out to support extraordinary things. The Lich is the bomb's worst consequence. Princess Bubblegum is the bomb's best consequence. Both emerged from the same mutagenic event. Both are what the bomb made. The show is honest about this. It does not pretend that only terrible things came from the terrible thing. The candy colours are the bomb's consequence. The warmth and the adventure, and Finn and Jake are the bomb's consequence. The world of Adventure Time, all of it, everything we love about it, is what happened after something ended to the world we recognise. And the arm is still in the tree trunk, still reaching. In the 3 seconds before every episode, the arm is reaching for a sky that has become warm and pink and alive. The war ended. The world continued. The arm is still there. Both things. Always both things. I've been working on this for a long time, longer than any of the other videos on this channel, because the Mushroom War documentation required going through the show, episode by episode, and tracking every artifact, every background detail, every production note. The Mushroom War Theory WordPress blog did enormous amounts of this work, and I want to credit them explicitly. The Adventure Time Conspiracies Tumblr, the Adventure Time Wiki's dedicated Mushroom War article, the Insurrection Central Fan Wiki, the Obsidian Lore Tumblr thread. These communities of people who paid attention, who paused on background details and looked things up and cross-referenced and documented. They did work that deserves recognition. They saw what the show was trusting someone to see. They assembled the picture that the show built across 10 seasons and multiple specials in fragments. The picture, a world that looks like ours, maybe recently, maybe now, ended in a nuclear exchange involving weapons based on real weapon designs, leaving the specific casualties of a winter morning on an East Coast subway platform and 2 people on a couch in a living room that the ocean would eventually claim. The survivors scattered or died of radiation sickness or sailed away in freighters toward islands far enough from the fallout to be livable. And the bomb released something ancient, something older than human civilization, something that had been sleeping in the geological record since an extinction event 65 million years ago. And that ancient thing walked through the ruins in the body it found near the detonation site and began a project of extinction that it has been pursuing for 1,000 years. And the mutagenic field that the bomb released worked through the soil and the water and the air, and it produced the world of Who, accidentally, as a side effect of the worst thing that had ever happened. All the wonder, all the strangeness, all the candy, and the rainicorns, and the fire kingdom, and the slime people, and the ice castle, and the treehouse built on a 1,000-year-old skeleton. All of it accidentally, because of the bomb. The word fission on the bomb casing in obsidian. Someone wrote it there. Someone at Adventure Time looked at a bomb in a background shot and wrote a real physics term on it, knowing someone would pause and read it knowing someone would note it in a lore thread and say, this is confirmation. Fission, nuclear fission, the splitting of atoms, the chain reaction, the conversion of mass to energy on a scale that changed the world. They wrote fission on a bomb in a background shot, and someone paused, and someone read it, and the show got exactly the response it trusted someone to give it. Thank you for being the person who pays this kind of attention tonight. Thank you for being here for all of it. This one was a lot, I know, but the Mushroom War deserved this treatment. It was always there. Every detail we talked about tonight was always there, in the backgrounds of episodes, in the production notes, in the storyboards that got cut and the dialogue that slipped through, and the specific winter coats on the specific commuters, in the specific subway station. That was the detonation site. It was always there. Now you know what to look for. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It keeps us making these, and it means more than I can properly express. And if you can't sleep now, if you're lying there thinking about fission on a bomb casing, or baby shoes, in an iceberg, or survive, written in red, on the ceiling of a bunker, where everyone died anyway, good. That means the show did exactly what it was always trying to do. Good night. Expansion. The specific people and what they were doing. I want to spend more time on the human beings who are alive during the Mushroom War, because the show gives us enough specific information to build fairly detailed pictures of individual people's experiences during and immediately after the war. Most analyses focus on the mythology, the bomb, the lich, the mutagenic field. I want to focus on the specific human experiences, because those are what give the mythology its weight. Elise. We've talked about her in some depth, but let me add the pieces the Obsidian episode contributes to the picture of her life before the war. The Obsidian Wiki notes that the flashback shows Elise and young Marceline living in a trailer in the desert. The desert detail is interesting. They are in a desert region, in a trailer. This places them somewhere in the American Southwest, possibly, or another desert region. Not a city, not a suburb. Somewhere rural enough that the immediate devastation of the bomb did not reach them physically, though the radiation did. Elise had a keycard to the fallout bunker. The wiki notes this, implying she used to reside here. She had a connection to the bunker before the war. The Screen Rant analysis of Obsidian speculates she was some kind of important person, possibly a scientist considering her access to a bunker. Someone with institutional access to a nuclear shelter. A scientist, a government employee, a military contractor, someone connected to the infrastructure that was building fallout shelters before the war began. Whatever she was professionally, she was prepared enough to have a keycard, which means someone planned for the war before it happened. Someone built the bunker in anticipation of needing it, and she didn't use it when the war came. She was in a trailer in the desert with her daughter. Not in the bunker. She was outside when the fallout hit. Why? The show doesn't say. Maybe she was caught somewhere else when the bombs fell. Maybe the bunker was too far away. Maybe she and Hudson were in the desert for reasons unrelated to the war's proximity, and the war found them there before they could reach the shelter. Whatever the reason, Elise had a key to a shelter she never got to use in time, and by the time she could reach it. The radiation had already started killing her. The Obsidian Tumblr lore thread caught something about the bunker interior that I find particularly specific. A skeleton sitting on a toilet. One of the people who died in the bunker died on the toilet. The bunker's last days, when the radiation was getting through, when the people who had done everything right were dying anyway, included someone dying on the toilet. This is not a dramatic death. This is an ordinary body function that was happening when the radiation overwhelmed someone. The specificity of it is characteristic of Adventure Time's approach to the war. It doesn't stylize the death. The skeleton is on the toilet because that's where the person was. Simon Petrikov. His pre-war life is documented primarily through the video diaries and through the details visible in his apartment in the diary recordings. The Adventure Time conspiracies, Tumblr analysed the setting of the video diaries. He is in an apartment, recording himself during the period when the Crown is beginning to affect him. The plane visible through the window in one of the diaries indicates the war has started. His surroundings in the diary, the apartment furniture, the shelves, the objects around him, are the objects of a pre-war professor's living space. Books, probably. Research materials. The normal accumulation of an academic life. He was an antiquarian. The show establishes this. Someone who studied ancient objects and historical artifacts. The Crown was his professional discovery. An artifact from a culture he didn't understand, which he put on because he didn't know what it was. An antiquarian was undone by an artifact. The irony is functional. The person most equipped to understand that ancient objects have unpredictable power was the one who put an ancient object of unpredictable power on his head. Betty was there. His fiancée. The Mushroom War. Wiki doesn't give us much about Betty's pre-war life, beyond her relationship with Simon. But the Betty episode and the Islands miniseries established that she was capable enough to eventually navigate the multiverse, trying to save him. She was a scholar in her own right. She was in the pre-war world when the war came, and the show implies she disappeared from Simon's life around the war. The specific trauma of the Crown taking Simon from her is tangled with the war's disruption. The before that Simon lost includes Betty. He lost his mind and his love and his world more or less simultaneously. 2. Bread Tom, the human community leader who appears in Everything Stays. His name, 2 Bread Tom, is one of the show's characteristic casual details that contains more than it initially suggests. Why 2 breads? Someone who had something to do with food, or bread specifically, in the immediate post-war community. Someone who always ate 2 slices. Someone named Tom, who was identified by a specific behaviour when food was scarce enough that what you ate defined you. The show never explains it, but the name suggests a community desperate enough for food that someone's eating habits became their identifier. 2 bread. Tom, the man who had 2 breads when everyone else had less, or the man who always made sure to have 2, or simply a name that stuck in a community making up new identity markers because the old ones stopped working. His cultural knowledge, he and his tribe sing the Mr. Belvedere theme. Mr. Belvedere aired from 1985 to 1990. His tribe knows this song well enough to sing it together around a fire. This means the tribe's cultural memory reaches back to pre-war television. They are preserving the songs and cultural products of the world that ended, carrying them forward into the post-war landscape as a form of identity maintenance. The TV theme songs are how they remember who they were. Cheers. Mr. Belvedere. Simon sings Cheers Alone in the Rubble to a 7-year-old girl. Two Bread Tom sings Mr. Belvedere with his tribe around a fire. The sounds of the world that ended become the lullabies of the world that's trying to continue. The businessmen. They are probably not named individuals in the show. They are a collective, the businessmen. And their backstory is deliberately generic. They were businessmen. They were frozen. They try to remember, and it hurts. This is the show's portrait of the pre-war world's most characteristic human type. People in suits, doing business, organised into the professional structures of a functioning capitalist economy. Frozen, preserved, thawed out into a world that no longer has capitalism or offices or the specific hierarchies that made businessmen a legible identity. Their pain when they try to remember is the pain of that specific discontinuity. They were shaped by a world that no longer exists, and trying to access the memory of that world is trying to make sense of a context that has no current referent. The people on the couch. I want to stay with them for a moment, because they are the show's most intimate image of the Mushroom War, and they are never named, never identified, barely glimpsed in a brief scene in Ocean of Fear that most people watch and move past. Two people on a couch in a living room at the bottom of the ocean. The living room's presence underwater means the sea level rose over their neighbourhood. The seismic disruption of the nuclear exchange or the glacier, melt from nuclear winters, subsequent warming, or some combination of events, raised the water until their home was submerged. They were on their couch. They did not move. They are still there. The adventure time. Wiki's description is minimal. Two dead bodies on a couch in the remains of a pre-war living room. The phrase remains of a pre-war living room is doing a lot of work. The room is still recognisable as a living room. The furniture is still there. The couch survived. The spatial arrangement is still legible as the kind of room people used for relaxation and socialising and watching television. The room is a living room, even though the people in it are dead and the ocean is in the walls. The form persists. The function ended. Two people on a couch, 1,000 years underwater, in the remains of a life that ended when the bombs fell. Expansion. Going through every remaining documented episode. The Mushroom War documentation in the show extends much further than the famous episodes. Let me trace the less discussed ones, because the consistency of the detail across the entire run is part of what makes the project so impressive. His Hero, Season 1, Episode 18. The Mushroom War Theory. Blog notes, TVS and other items lie scattered around Billy's Cave. Billy's Cave, the home of the legendary hero whose adventures Finn and Jake aspire to match, is furnished with artefacts from the pre-war world. Billy, the greatest hero in the world of Ooo, has been collecting and keeping pre-war objects. The televisions and other items are part of his living space. He is old enough to have known the pre-war world, and he has kept pieces of it around him, probably for reasons he doesn't fully articulate, even to himself. Legends of Ooo, Season 2, Episode 28. This is a game on the Cartoon Network website, rather than a broadcast episode, but the Mushroom War Wiki includes it. Legends of Ooo, a game on CartoonNetwork.com, mentions the Mushroom War. If one clicks on the radio in Marceline's house, Jake states that they stopped making these before the Great Mushroom War. Same line, same radio, same casual naming of the war. The game maintained the show's consistency about the war's named existence in Ooze cultural memory. Thank you. Season 3, Episode 17. The Mushroom War Theory blog. Outside the home of the snow golem appears to be a snow-covered bulldozer, which could possibly be an artefact from before the war. The house in which the snow golem lives could also be a remnant from before the war, as suggested by Tom Herpick's promo art for the episode, which depicts a family of humans living in the house in a time before it was covered with snow. Tom Herpick's promo art is specifically cited here. The writer and storyboard artist for the episode drew a human family in the house before the snow covered it as promotional art. This is confirmation from production that the snow golem's house was a human house before the war. Someone built it. A family lived in it. The war ended the family's occupation. The snow eventually covered the building, and the snow golem moved in. The snow golem lives in a pre-war house that a pre-war family built and abandoned when the world ended. Jake the Brick, Season 6, Episode 20. The Mushroom War Wiki. The structure Finn walks on in Jake the Brick is likely a relic from before the war. In other episodes, such as Dentist, The Visitor, and Dark Purple, the ruins of various buildings are visible, including what appears to be an underwater city. Multiple episodes simply have ruins in the background, documented without specific narrative attention. The ruins of the pre-war world are so consistently present in the background of Ooze landscape that multiple episodes contain them incidentally, as visual context rather than plot element. The world is built in the ruins. The ruins are everywhere. They don't need to be remarked upon, because they are as normal as trees. James Baxter, The Horse, Season 5, Episode 20. The Mushroom War Theory blog. When cheering people up, Finn and Jake come across a sad ghost on a potentially abandoned railroad, a railroad track. The pre-war infrastructure included railroads, and the railroad is still there. Not in operation, presumably, but structurally present enough to walk along. A ghost sits on the track. The ghost has been there since before ghosts were notable, since the early post-war period, presumably, when the railroad's abandonment left the ghost with nowhere to go that wasn't the place where the track used to be useful. Billy's Bucket List, Season 5, Episode 52. The Mushroom War Wiki. When Finn is swimming beneath the ocean, the remnants of buildings can be seen in the background, similar to what appeared in Ocean of Fear. Artist Derek Hunter is quoted as confirming the background for the motorcycle scene features bombs, a buried car, and a lighter. He specifies these are a reference to the film Tremors. So this is production information about the intended reference. But the objects are what they are in the world of the show. Bombs, a buried car, a lighter, in the landscape of a post-war world where these things are just there. Princess Potluck, Season 4, Episode 23. The Mushroom War Theory blog. When Ice King goes to the forest, there appears to be the remaining top of a red car sticking out of the ground. A red car, buried vertically, with its roof visible above ground. either buried by an explosion that drove it into the earth or slowly covered by the soil around it. As the landscape shifted over a millennium and the roof is still red, the colour has lasted 1,000 years in the ground. The car is still recognisable as a car from the top. It is just there, in the forest, where the Ice King walks past it to go to a potluck party, and nobody mentions it. The Suitor, Season 5, Episode 22. In the vapour swamps, one can see a few decomposed buildings in the background. Decomposed. Not just ruined, decomposed. The specific word suggests a degree of breakdown beyond simple structural damage, as if the material itself is being broken down by the swamp's chemistry, or by the accumulated moisture and biological activity of 1,000 years. The buildings in the vapour swamps are being eaten by the environment around them. Eventually, they will be gone entirely, absorbed into the swamp, leaving no visible trace. The war is erasing itself, slowly, through the natural processes of decay. The party's over. Isla de Señorita, Season 5, Episode 35, The Wiki. When the Ice King first hears island ladies singing, ruined buildings can be seen in the water off the coast of the island, similar to the ruins seen in Ocean of Fear. The ruins are coastal, visible from the water. The pattern is consistent. Wherever there was a city, the sea level rose over it. The world's coastlines moved inward. The coastal cities, the ones that weren't destroyed directly by the bombs, are underwater. The ones that were destroyed are ruins. There are no intact pre-war cities. Marceline's Closet, again, and Web Weirdos, again, and Hugwolf again. These episodes keep appearing in the documentation, because the show was so consistent about putting war artifacts in the background, that even episodes about mundane Adventure Time plots, a ghost in a closet, spiders in love, a werewolf, have ruins or pre-war objects visible somewhere in the frame. And the war is in every episode, in the landscape, in the background details, in the objects that the characters use without knowing what they are. Expansion. What the war produced and how it made. Oh, let me think carefully about the specific mechanism by which the Mushroom War produced ooh, because this is the piece of the war's legacy that is most directly connected to everything we love about Adventure Time. The bomb was mutagenic. This is the specific feature that distinguishes the mushroom bomb from a conventional nuclear weapon. The mushroom bomb, Wiki. The bomb's detonation devastated the surrounding city. Its distinct mushroom cloud, made up of many green, howling faces. The bomb leaves behind a crater filled with a glowing green substance. Anyone who comes into contact is able to be possessed by the Lich. And the bomb likely mutated much of the surviving life after the war. Mutated much of the surviving life. This is the origin story of every non-human species in Ooh. The Candy People emerged from the mutagenic field, interacting with the organic compounds in the post-war environment and producing the Mother Gum. The Mother Gum organised itself into a consciousness that became Princess Bubblegum and the Candy People, the Slime People, the Crystal People, the Food People, the various intelligent non-human species. All of them are the mutagenic field, working through whatever organisms and materials survived in the blast's influence zone. The sign zombies are road signs that mutated. This is not an extraordinary claim within the show's established biology. If the mutagenic field can produce sentient candy from organic goo, it can produce some kind of animation in traffic signs made of metal and paint. The sign, zombies, are the war's reach, extending even to the inanimate objects of the old world. The transformation was broad. It hid everything. And here is the specific piece that the farm world makes clear. Without the bomb, none of this happens. The farm world timeline, per the Insurrection Central Wiki, shows that humanity managed to remain the dominant species on the planet in the absence of the mushroom bomb. No candy people, no fire people, no slime people, no rainicorns colonising the mainland, no magic ecology of the scale that Ooo has. The bomb was the event that opened the world to what Ooo became. This puts Princess Bubblegum in a specific relationship to the bomb. She is its most sophisticated consequence. The bomb released the mutagenic field that produced the mother gum that differentiated into her. The bomb is her origin story. Every candy person is the bomb's consequence. The Candy Kingdom, the most stable and sophisticated civilization in the post-war world, is a nuclear weapons aftermath organised into architecture. The adventure happens in the aftermath of the bomb. The candy colours are what the bomb eventually produced. The TV Tropes fan theory page on the Mushroom War includes a theory that connects the nuclear transformation to the emergence of magic. The Great Mushroom War indirectly put the whole universe on drugs. This is framed satirically, but points at something real. The mushroom bomb is implied to have magical properties, and the bomb's detonation contributed heavily to the re-emergence of magic, per the Adventure Time wiki. The bomb didn't just produce physical mutation, it released something that reawakened magical potential that had been dormant, possibly connected to the Lich's Golb-associated energy, possibly a separate consequence of the specific mixture of nuclear and ancient magical resonance. Magic in Adventure Time is not present in the pre-war world in the way it's present in Ooo, or if it was present, it was marginal. The Ice Crown was an exception, powerful precisely because magical artefacts were rare. After the war, magic is ambient. Wizards exist. Elemental magic is everywhere. The crystal dimension has always had its magic, but the mainland's magical ecology expanded dramatically after the bomb. The bomb unlocked something. Whatever the Lich's GOLB connected essence contained, cosmic anti-life energy, dimensional resonance, whatever theological framework you use for what Golb is, releasing it into the world changed what the world was capable of. The candy people experience magic as normal because they are magic. They emerged from a magical biological process that the bomb made possible. They have never known a world where magic isn't normal, because they are the consequence of the world that wasn't magic becoming magical. For them, the warmth and the colour and the candy are just what the world is. The bomb and the war and the skeletons in the subway station are history, not personal memory. They were made from the aftermath. The aftermath is all they know. Expansion. What adventure Time was saying with all of this? I want to spend the end of this video, the last extended section, thinking about what the Mushroom War documentation means as a creative statement. Not just what it tells us about the show's world, but what the show was saying by building this world this way. Adventure Time ran on Cartoon Network. It was scheduled for children. The Mushroom War is nuclear war. The baby shoes in the iceberg belong to a baby in a world that ended in nuclear exchange. The commuters in the subway were people in suits with winter coats who died mid-commute. The person in the fallout bunker died on the toilet. The people on the couch are at the bottom of the ocean. A word on a bomb in a background shot says fission. And the show put all of this into a programme for children. Why? The tiny Mammal Kingdom Substack analysis of Adventure Time and the apocalypse offers the most complete answer I've encountered. The land itself bears the scars of this deep, pervading sense of loss. The music hole has been there for 1,000 years, the span of time since the Mushroom War, suggesting it was probably caused by the war, and has been alone ever since, singing to no one, unable to participate in joy or prevent disaster. It's a symbol of how the apocalypse in this world created scars which run unfathomably deep, and demonstrates how the show incorporates the loss and sadness caused by the end of the world into the very land itself. The land itself. The show put the loss of the Mushroom War into the land, not just in the ruins and the artefacts, but in the music hole that has been singing for 1,000 years to no one, in the arm reaching upward from the tree trunk, in the radioactive river under the candy, in the two people on the couch at the bottom of the ocean. The land is the record of what happened. The world carries the war in its geography and its objects and its scars. And into this world, this specific world that carries these specific scars, the show sent a 12-year-old boy who does not know he is the last of his kind, who grew up without knowing what his world was built on, who does good in the aftermath of a catastrophe that predates his birth by a millennium. Finn does not know about the commuters in the subway station. He does not know about the baby shoes. He does not know about survive, written on the ceiling of a bunker that failed to save anyone. He knows there was a war. He knows it was long ago. He knows the ruins are ruins. But the weight of it, the full specific human weight of what was lost, he doesn't carry that. He carries the present. This is the show's most hopeful argument, that the present can be worth protecting even without the full weight of history bearing down on you. Finn protects Ooo because it's beautiful, and because people need protecting, and because that's what he does. Not because he has read a comprehensive account of the Mushroom War. The candy colours are warm to him because they are warm, not because he understands that they are the bomb's consequence. The adventure is joyful to him. Because it's joyful, he lives in the aftermath without being defined by the aftermath. And this, I think, is what the show was saying to children who wouldn't have the full context for the war's documentation, but who would absorb the landscape. You are living in the aftermath of things that happened before you. The world you inhabit has history embedded in it that you don't fully understand yet. The ruins are everywhere. The arm is reaching in the opening of every episode. And you can still go on adventures. You can still do good. The warmth of the world is real, even though the costs of the world are real. Both things are true. And you can hold both and still go out and protect what's worth protecting. The Mushroom War documentation is not a statement about the inevitability of apocalypse. It's not a nuclear anxiety nightmare embedded in a children's cartoon. It is the show doing the specific, difficult thing of saying, This happened. And here is what it cost. And here is also what it produced. And both the cost and the production are part of what is. The arm in the tree is still reaching. The adventure is still happening. The candy colours are still warm. And the baby shoes are still in the iceberg. And the bunker still has Survive on its ceiling. And the people are still on their couch at the bottom of the ocean. All of it. Simultaneously. The world is made of all of it. The word fission is on the bomb because the word fission is accurate. The show cared about accuracy, even in background details in Distant Lands specials. It cared about the Fat Man design and the East Coast commuters and the Generation 3 iMac and the camera phone timeline. It cared about getting the specific weight of the specific thing right, because the specific weight is what makes it true. Not vague apocalypse, specific nuclear fission-powered Fat Man-shaped apocalypse that hit New York or New Jersey commuters who were bundled up for winter on their way somewhere. And then the candy colours, and then the music, and then Finn and Jake, and then the adventure. Thank you for spending this time tonight. Thank you for being the kind of audience that the show was trusting. The kind who pauses on the word fission and looks up the manufacturing date of a camera phone and asks whose baby shoes were in the iceberg. This is the right way to love something. You give it the attention it built itself to earn. Subscribe if you haven't. Come back, there's always more in the background. And if you can't sleep now, if you're thinking about the Survive on the bunker ceiling, or the arm in the tree trunk, or the commuters bundled up for winter, that's right. That means you saw it. The show put it there to be seen. Good night. Expansion. The specific geography of the war and what it tells us. One of the things the show documents through its background details is not just the fact of the war, but its specific geography. Where things were, what got hit, what survived. Assembling this picture requires cross-referencing details across many episodes, but the result is a rough map of what the war looked like in geographic terms. The detonation site, New York or New Jersey subway. The Lich's well of power is in a subway station, with New York or New Jersey style platforms. This places the primary detonation event, or at least the most significant detonation for the show's purposes, on the east coast of North America. The mushroom cloud, visible in Mortal Folly, and the crater, documented in Finn the Human, are associated with this site. The Farmworld geography confirms this reading. Farmworld Marceline describes the bombers poised to bathe the land in mutagenic horror. And Simon stops it. The hill he watches from while the B-29s approach, the specific landscape visible in the Farmworld sequence, is consistent with a North American East Coast setting. The planes come from the direction that makes sense for aircrafts based further inland or at sea, approaching a coastal city from the west or northwest. The underwater city in Ocean of Fear and Billy's Bucket List and other episodes is described as having an aircraft carrier stranded among its ruins. Aircraft carriers are naval vessels. They are deployed in or near water. An aircraft carrier stranded in the ruins of a coastal city suggests either a massive tsunami triggered by the detonation or a sea level rise that occurred after the war ended, or both. The carrier is not floating. It is stranded on or near buildings. It was brought inland by water at some point after the war. The sea level evidence is the most consistent geographic claim across the show. The Mushroom War Theory blog, the Science Fictional Analysis, the Insurrection Central Wiki, all of them note the same thing from the Ocean of Fear episode. The sea level rose significantly after the war. Ooo is island-like, because what was once coastal land is now underwater. The geography of the pre-war world has been fundamentally reshaped by the combined effects of nuclear winter, subsequent warming, and whatever specific cataclysmic events the bombs triggered. The Colosseum in Italy, if that identification is correct, places the war's reach into Europe. The Romans built the Colosseum. It has survived multiple European conflicts, earthquakes, centuries of looting. It survived the Mushroom War in damaged form. Europe was hit or affected, or the Colosseum's extraordinary structural durability simply means it outlasted the bombs, the way it has outlasted everything else. But its presence in Adventure Time's world as an ant arena confirms that the war's effects reached across the Atlantic. The Glass Kingdom, in the desert region where Elise and young Marceline walked, is described in the Obsidian episode as having been created by a bolt of magic lightning striking the desert. The Obsidian Tumblr lore thread notes: the magic lightning that created the Glass Kingdom could itself have been one of the nukes. Alternatively, it could have been the Catalyst Comet, although Finn has no connection to this place, so that's probably not the case. A nuclear detonation that hit the desert and transmuted the sand into glass. The glass people who live there are the consequence of that specific detonation, beings made of what a nuclear event produces when it hits a desert full of silica. The Glass Kingdom is a specific geographic consequence of a specific nuclear event. The desert of what was once a wasteland is now an inhabited kingdom of glass people, ruled by the legacy of the specific weapon that hit that specific desert. Hudson Abadir's refrigerator magnets from Vegas, Orlando, and Arizona add their own geographic element. Las Vegas, Orlando, Florida, and Arizona, the American Southwest and Southeast, were pre-war tourist destinations, significant enough that people bought souvenir magnets from them. Hudson has these. Someone visited these places before the war and bought the magnets. He has them in the Nightosphere. These three places existed in the Adventure Time world's pre-war era as the tourist destinations they are in our world. Arizona, being a separate magnet from Las Vegas, is interesting. It implies the tourist infrastructure of the American Southwest was intact and functioning in the Adventure Time world's pre-war period, with Arizona as a distinct enough destination to merit its own souvenir. Whatever Arizona-specific attraction or feature was worth a tourist magnet, the Grand Canyon perhaps, or something more specific to the world the show was building. It was there. The magnet survived. The attraction presumably didn't survive in any accessible form. Expansion, the war and its connection to the broader cosmology. The Mushroom War exists within Adventure Time's larger cosmological framework. The Catalyst Comet cycles, Golb, the Lich's history that predates the war by 65 million years. Understanding how the war connects to that larger framework changes how you read it. The Catalyst Comet hit Earth 65 million years ago. The Adventure Time episode, Evergreen, establishes this. The Catalyst Comet carried the Lich's essence, or was the Lich in a comet form. The impact killed the dinosaurs and left the Lich's essence embedded in the Earth's geology. This is the show's retelling of the KPG extinction event. The asteroid that hit 65 million years ago carried a cosmic evil entity. Everything after that impact, including the evolution of human beings, happened in a world that had the Lich's essence in its bedrock. The mushroom bomb somehow activated or released this essence. The Adventure Time Wiki. One popular fan theory states that the bomb may have contained the essence of the Lich that was deposited on Earth by a catalyst comet, explaining how the bomb unleashed him. The theory is that whoever built the mushroom bomb, whether knowingly or through the specific terrible accident of wartime weapons development, built a bomb that incorporated the geological residue of a 65 million year old impact event. The bomb's mutagenic properties are the Lich's essence becoming active. This timeline means the Lich was dormant in the Earth for 65 million years. 65 million years of geological pressure and tectonic movement and erosion and accumulation. And the essence stayed. Dinosaurs evolved and were replaced by mammals, who evolved into humans, who developed civilization, who developed nuclear weapons, who used one of those weapons on a subway station in New York or New Jersey, and detonated the 65 million year old dormant entity in the process. The entire history of life on Earth, from the KPG extinction to the Mushroom War, is the interval between the Lich's dormancy and his awakening. The Adventure Time fandom. Wiki notes the bomb's cloud as a deep green and made up of many howling, skull-shaped faces. The green of the Lich's essence, the specific colour associated with cosmic death and anti-life in the show, is the colour of the mushroom cloud. The cloud is the Lich screaming as he's given a new body. The image you would have seen if you were near the detonation site, watching the cloud rise into the sky, would have been a green cloud of howling skulls. This is what the commuters bundled for winter died beneath. If they were outside when it happened, this is what the people in the buildings saw through their windows as the shockwave approached. The BMO Distant Lands episode adds the detail of 2 large nuclear detonations in different parts of the planet, in addition to the main explosion that created the crater. The war involved multiple detonations on multiple continents, not just the mushroom bomb's specific site, but a broader exchange. The 2 additional detonations confirm a global nuclear exchange rather than a single event. Somewhere on the other side of the planet from the New Jersey subway station, 2 other bombs went off. The people in those locations, commuters of their own, people in their own houses, on their own couches, had their own versions of the last moment. The show only shows us the North American version, but the BMO special confirms the war was global. GOLB's connection to the Lich, and therefore to the bomb. The series finale establishes that Golb is a fundamental chaos entity, that the Lich is his last scholar, a being devoted to Golb's principle of total annihilation. The bomb that released the Lich was, in a sense, a bomb made from Golb's influence on Earth's geology. The Mushroom War was, in the show's cosmological framework, an event that allowed the universe's most fundamental destructive principle to briefly actualize on Earth in physical form. The bomb was not just a nuclear weapon, it was a ritual, accidental, unknowing, but a ritual nonetheless, that summons something ancient and cosmic into a human body in a New Jersey subway station. And then Simon Petrikov found Marceline crying in the ruins and sang her the Cheers theme, the show's most specific juxtaposition, the scale of cosmic horror that the bomb represented, and the specific human tenderness of one person finding a child and trying to comfort them. Both things, simultaneously. The Lich walks the earth, and a man sings a TV theme to a little girl in the ruins of civilization. This is what Adventure Time was always doing with the Mushroom War, holding the cosmic scale and the human scale at the same time, refusing to let either one erase the other. Expansion, the specific texture of the post-war world in detail. The first 15 years after the Mushroom War, per the canonical timeline, are the most densely documented period of Adventure Time's backstory. Let me trace them carefully, because the accumulation of specific events gives you a texture that the individual details don't convey alone. Year 0, the bomb. The Lich is released. The mutagenic field begins spreading. Whatever humans were alive at the moment of detonation, the commuters, the people in buildings, the people in the countryside, far enough from ground zero to survive the immediate blast, are now living in a world where the sky may be full of debris, and the radiation is spreading, and the social infrastructure is collapsing. Governments presumably fail within days or weeks. The supply chains that keep modern civilization alive, food distribution, water treatment, power generation, begin breaking down. Within months, the situation has become what Elise and Marceline's early flashbacks show. People in trailers in deserts, looking for shelter. Elise and Marceline are alive. The timing established by the Adventure Time timeline, Wiki places Elise's death at approximately 1 year after the war. This means Elise survived the immediate detonation and the initial radiation exposure, well enough to live for a year in the post-war landscape. She was healthy enough, or far enough from ground zero, or both, to keep moving and to keep taking care of Marceline for a year before the radiation sickness overwhelmed her. A year of post-war survival, finding food, finding shelter, making a map to a bunker, protecting a half-demon child from a world full of new and dangerous things. The oozers and mutant coyotes that the Mushroom War Wiki mentions as immediate post-war threats. The first generation of mutagenic creatures conceived immediately after the blast were present during this year. Elise and Marceline were moving through a landscape that was both nuclear wasteland and emerging chaos, with the first mutagenic creatures just beginning to appear. The Adventure Time world's first year was its most dangerous, with the mutagenic field still actively transforming things, and the new creatures not yet having established ecological patterns that would make them predictable. By year 2, Simon and Marceline. The Insurrection Central Wiki. 5 years AMW. Simon Petrikov adopts a half-demon girl, Marceline, and raises her in the new post-apocalyptic world until he's forced to abandon her as a result of his eroding sanity. The 5 years is from the Timeline Wiki. Simon and Marceline are together for approximately 5 years before he has to leave. Simon and Marcy shows them in the ruins of a city, finding soup, navigating the specific challenges of the early post-war landscape. The oozers are there. The ruins are fresh enough that the buildings are mostly standing, even as the world has changed completely around them. Their Cheers theme, Simon sings it to keep Marceline calm, to keep himself present, to maintain some thread of connection to the before. The before that included television shows with theme songs about bars where everybody knows your name, the specific choice of Cheers, a show about community, about people who know each other and gather regularly in a warm place. For a man and a child, alone in the ruins of the world, is the show's most compressed statement of what the war cost. Community, warmth, belonging. The TV show that celebrated these things is the only thread Simon has left to them, and he sings it in the ruins, because that's what the ruins need. A reminder that warm places existed once and might exist again. The Crown is taking him during these years. The 5 years from year 2 to year 5 are the years of the Crown's escalating possession. The years when Simon keeps putting it on because he has to, and pulling it off because he doesn't want to lose himself, while Marceline watches and loves him and tries to help and cannot. The specific emotional texture of Simon and Marcy is the texture of those years. A child watching someone she loves disappear from behind familiar eyes, watching the familiar face become something else, knowing the trajectory but not able to stop it. By year 10, Hunson and the Fry song. The timeline places this approximately 10 years after the war. Marceline is with her father, or near him. They are at a diner. Memory of a memory shows the destroyed diner where Hunson eats her fries. The diner is still partially standing, 10 years after the war. The infrastructure of the old world is degrading, but not yet gone. The menu is presumably not being updated, and the kitchen is probably not fully functional. But the building is there, and Hunson and Marceline are in it, and he eats her fries and doesn't notice when she cries. By year 15, Two Bread, Tom's departure. The human community that has been surviving in a forest settlement detects the atmospheric change coming. Nuclear winter settling in, or the climate destabilising in ways that make the region unlivable and makes the decision to leave. They have a freighter. They've been planning or found the opportunity. They take everything they can carry and sail away. And Marceline, who is at this point beginning her vampire hunting work, watches the last organised human community in her world depart. She has already lost her mother and Simon. Now she watches the humans leave. By year 15, she is functionally alone in a world that is becoming something new around her. The Adventure Time canonical timeline notes that she was protecting Two Bread Tom's tribe from vampires during this period. She was already fighting for them, already trying to keep them safe, already the person who showed up when the people she cared about needed protecting. And they still left. She protected them, and they went anyway, because they had to, because the climate was wrong, and the world was dangerous, and an island far away was better than a forest full of vampires and mutagenic creatures, no matter how capable their protector was. After year 15, the centuries. The timeline gets sparse after Two Bread Tom's departure, filled in only by specific events the show documents in flashbacks. Marceline becomes the Vampire Queen. The Candy Kingdom begins to form. The Rainicorn Dog Wars play out. In the Crystal Dimension, the world that will become Ooh begins taking shape. And somewhere in the background of all of this, the ruins of the old world are slowly being absorbed by the new one. Overgrown, flooded, colonised by new species who don't know what the buildings they're living in were for. The long, slow process of the ruins becoming normal. The river of junk doesn't stop flowing. The cars buried in the soil don't stop being buried. The baby shoes in the iceberg stay frozen. But the world around these artefacts changes. The world that made them is increasingly distant. The beings who are born into Oo after the first generation know the ruins as ruins, not as the recent aftermath of something. For Princess Bubblegum, the ruins are recent memory. For the candy people she creates, the ruins are just the landscape. For Finn, born 1,000 years later, the ruins are ancient history that he accepts as background context without fully registering its weight. This is the specific arc of how catastrophe becomes history, becomes landscape. It starts as devastation and becomes ruins and becomes background and becomes the normal landscape of the world that grew up around it. The Mushroom War was devastating. Then it was recent ruins. Then it was old ruins. Then it was Oo, with ruins in the background that everyone lives among without fully thinking about them. The arm in the tree trunk is still reaching. It's been reaching for 1,000 years. By the time Finn and Jake run past it in the opening credits, it is so thoroughly part of the normal visual landscape that nobody stops to ask whose arm it is. But the show trusted that someone would ask, and some people did, and they assembled the full picture of what it was and where it came from, and who it might have belonged to, and what it was still reaching for. Thank you for being those people tonight. Expansion. The music whole and what it means. The tiny mammal kingdom analysis pointed to the music hole as one of the war's most specific consequences, and I want to give it more attention than I've given it so far, because the music hole is one of the show's strangest and most quietly devastating pieces of post-war environmental storytelling. The music hole appears in The Music Hole, Season 7, Episode 17. She is a deep hole in the ground that sings, and the show establishes that she can only be heard by those who see the world with childlike wonder, or those with a deep sense of loss in their hearts. The childlike wonder and the deep loss are presented as the two conditions of access. You have to have one or the other to hear her. The canonical timeline places her existence as extending back to approximately the time of the Mushroom War. She has been there for 1,000 years, the duration of the show's backstory. The implication, the tiny mammal kingdom analysis, makes explicit. The music hole has been there for 1,000 years. The span of time since the Mushroom War, suggesting it was probably caused by the war. If the music hole was caused by the war, if she is a consequence of the bomb and the mutagenic field, and whatever specific geological and metaphysical event produced her, then she is one of the war's strangest and most specific legacies. A singing hole in the ground that has been singing for 1,000 years to no one who could hear her, who is unable to participate in joy or prevent disaster, who exists as pure song in the landscape of a world that doesn't know where the song comes from. The two conditions of access map onto the show's core emotional vocabulary. Childlike wonder is what Finn brings to every situation, the quality that makes him capable of seeing the world as a place worth protecting and adventuring in. Deep sense of loss is what Marceline carries, what Simon carries, what the survivors of the Mushroom War carry. Both can hear the music hole. Both have access to whatever the music hole is singing. What is she singing? The show doesn't fully tell you. She sings. She has been singing for 1,000 years. Whatever her song is, grief, memory, the residual echo of something that was lost when the bomb fell, or something more abstract, the universe's own expression of the gap between what was and what is. It has been available to anyone capable of hearing it for the entire run of the world we know as Ooh. This is the show's most ambient piece of mushroom war mythology. Not a ruin, not an artifact, not a dead body on a couch. A sound, a song that has been singing since the war, heard only by those with the right kind of heart, carrying whatever truth is in it, through 1,000 years of world that has mostly moved on from what produced it. The war left a hole in the ground that sings. That's one of the most specific and strange things Adventure Time ever said about what catastrophe leaves behind. Expansion. The objects that survived and what their survival means. There is a category of mushroom war detail that the show uses consistently, and that I've been tracking through the episode list without naming explicitly. The objects that survived. The pre-war objects that are still present. Still functional, or at least structurally intact. In Ooh, 1,000 years after the war. The radio in Marceline's house. They stopped making these before the Great Mushroom War. The radio is there. It's old enough to predate the war. It is still in Marceline's house. Still clickable. She has kept a pre-war radio for 1,000 years. This is consistent with everything we know about Marceline and objects. She keeps things. She can't throw things away. The Hambo, the shirts, the photo booth pictures, and the radio that they stopped making before the Great Mushroom War. The DVDs in the Ice Kings collection. Human actors, pre-war movies. The Ice King has a movie collection from a civilization that ended. Simon Petrikov, in his original life, watched films. He had opinions about films, probably. He was the kind of intellectual who engaged with culture. The Ice King doesn't know why the DVDs are significant. The Crown has eaten the memories, but he kept them. Some vestige of Simon's preference for the before is still operating in the Ice King, expressed as an incomprehensible attachment to human actor films. The flamethrower Finn builds in Business Time, constructed from 2 fuel tanks, connected to a rifle by a tube. Finn improvises a weapon from pre-war materials. He doesn't know what the fuel tanks were for originally. They might be from a car, or industrial equipment, or military vehicles. He knows enough about pre-war technology, or has experimented enough with it, to know that fuel tanks, plus a tube, plus a rifle, produces something flammable. The practical knowledge of pre-war technology is part of Finn's toolkit, even though he has no formal education in what the technology was for. The submarine in Ocean of Fear. It contains a fire extinguisher, which is most likely from before the war. The submarine is pre-war military technology, maintained well enough by the post-war world, or by simple durability, that it still functions. The fire extinguisher inside it is still there, still presumably functional. A pre-war safety device inside a pre-war submarine that Finn and Jake used to explore a post-war underwater city. The safety infrastructure of the old world preserved in the depths, still potentially able to serve its original function. The helicopter on the skyscraper roof, in heat signature, the skyscraper itself still standing, the helicopter pad still marked with its H. The helicopter on the pad crashed, but still recognisably a helicopter. All of this infrastructure preserved in the 1,000 years after the war, because steel and concrete and the specific durability of mid-20th century construction materials. The helicopter was not designed to last 1,000 years. The skyscraper was not designed to become background set dressing for a vampire's aesthetic sense. They endured anyway, because the quality of their construction exceeded the requirements of the situation they were built for. The tourist magnets on Hunson's fridge. These are perhaps the most mundane objects in the entire Mushroom War documentation. Souvenir refrigerator magnets, the kind that are worth about $3 at a gift shop, and that accumulate on refrigerators through no deliberate curation. Someone bought them, Hunson kept them. A demon lord in a hell dimension has souvenir magnets from American tourist destinations, preserved through the war and through 1,000 subsequent years, still on his kitchen appliances. These magnets are more durable than the civilization that produced them. What does it mean that these objects survive? The Tiny Mammal Kingdom analysis frames it as the show incorporating the loss and sadness caused by the end of the world into the very land itself. The objects are not just nostalgia, devices, or world-building texture. They are the land's memory. They are the world carrying what happened in the most literal possible way, preserving the objects that were there when the war occurred, maintaining them through the centuries, distributed through the landscape as the world's own record of its history. Finn and Jake don't know the history of most of the objects they encounter. The businessmen in the iceberg don't know their own history. The Ice King doesn't know why the DVDs matter. Marceline probably doesn't think about the radio consciously. The objects survive outside of the awareness of the people who encounter them. They are the war's record, maintained without intention, presence because objects endure. And then someone, some fan, some attentive viewer, pauses the episode, reads the label on the object, cross-references the production date or the manufacturing history, documents it in a wiki or a Tumblr thread or a WordPress blog called Mushroom War Theory. And the object that survived, without anyone intending it to be documented, becomes documented anyway, through the same act of attention that the show was always trusting someone to give it. The word fission is on the bomb because it needed to be confirmed. The baby shoes are in the iceberg because the war happened to a world with babies in it. The radio stopped being made before the Great Mushroom War because the person who made radios stopped making radios at some point. For a reason. And the reason was the war. All of it is there. All of it was always there. Tonight, at least, we looked at all of it together. Thank you. Good night, Expansion. The complete catalogue and final accounting. Let me finish by going through some of the remaining documented details from the Adventure Time Wiki's Mushroom War article that we haven't yet addressed, because the catalogue deserves to be complete. Buutopia, Season 3, Episode 17, the Wikipedia article on the episode and the Mushroom War Theory blog identify what appears to be a luxury resort, as seen in the title card, When Susan, Finn and Jake arrive at Buutopia, it seems as if it was some sort of underground shopping mall or luxury resort due to signs left on the sides of buildings such as eat, sail, buy and food. Also, the Lub-Glubs appeared to be evil creatures inside floaties that survived during the war. That, or the floaties mutated. An underground mall, the pre-war world's consumer infrastructure, retail, food, entertainment, became post-war shelter infrastructure. The signs saying eat, sail, buy, food are the mall's original commercial purpose, preserved in the space where humans took shelter. The survivors of the war moved into the place designed to make them spend money and used it to survive. The economy is gone. The space remains. The signs still advertise. And the floaties, the pool toys that were in the mall's pool facilities or water feature, became or were colonised by something that threatens the people living there. Evil in floaties. Even the recreational water accessories of the consumer world were transformed by the mutagenic field. The New Frontier, Season 3, Episode 15. Jake's statement that rocket ships haven't been reinvented yet is the most direct confirmation of technological regression in the show. The Adventure Time world had space travel, not just theoretical or aspirational. The show implies actual functioning rocketry existed in the pre-war world. Because reinvented implies it existed before and was lost. The institutional knowledge required to build rockets, the engineering, the physics, the manufacturing chains, the computational infrastructure was severed by the war. 1,000 years later, someone named Banana Man has built something that might be a rocket. And Jake's phrasing frames this as an attempted reinvention of a lost technology rather than a first invention. The war broke the chain between knowing how to do something and being able to do it. Jermaine, Season 7, Episode 8, The Mushroom War Wiki. A piece of debris can be seen near the treehouse. Background debris near Finn's home. The treehouse, which itself grows from Shoko's irradiated body, itself a war consequence, sits in a landscape that still has debris nearby. Not major debris, just a piece. The landscape around the treehouse is normal Adventure Time landscape. And there's a piece of debris. It's been there since the episode was made. In the background, unremarked upon, You Forgot Your Floaties. Season 7, Episode 15. Magic Man's house is surrounded by abandoned vehicles. Magic Man's house, as a location, is surrounded by the cars and trucks of the pre-war world, rusted out and sitting in the landscape. He has been there for a long time. The vehicles accumulated or were already there. His territory is defined by the abandoned infrastructure of the before. An immortal being who went mad with grief lives in a house surrounded by the cars of a civilization that ended. Bananas, Season 8, Episode 20. The Mushroom War Wiki notes. There is an old tyre swing, and well close by the tree, Finn sits by. A tyre swing. The children of the pre-war world had tyre swings. Someone tied a tyre to a rope and hung it from a tree for a child to swing on. And the tyre is still there, and the rope has presumably rotted. But the tyre remains on or near the tree, or on the ground nearby. Someone in the pre-war world tied that tyre to that tree for a child. The child is gone. The tyre is there. Also in Bananas, Finn and Ice King visit the headquarters of Blay Magazine. The headquarters is inside a building, in the ruins of a city, with most of the buildings submerged underwater. A magazine. Blow Magazine had a headquarters building. The building is in a ruined city, partially underwater. Someone published a magazine from that building. Someone subscribed to it. Someone designed its logo and wrote its articles and ran its editorial meetings. The building that housed all of that is now partially submerged in the ruins of the city that surrounded it. And the Ice King is visiting it for a plot reason that has nothing to do with its pre-war identity. The First Investigation, Season 10, Episode 6. The Mushroom War Wiki. Joshua and Margaret. Investigations headquarters reappears but in a state of decay on the same modern town from Joshua and Margaret Investigations. One of the time slips shows a human woman from the past. An old bicycle can be seen in the attic. A time slip. In Joshua and Margaret's old headquarters, in the building where Jake's parents worked, a time slip shows a human woman from the pre-war past. A glimpse through time, a brief window into the world that was, and what appears through the window is a human woman. Not a mutant, not a candy person, not a rainicorn or a slime person, or any of the species of ooh. A human woman. In the same space where the building now stands in decay. A human woman once existed. The building has a human past, visible through its temporal anomalies. The bicycle in the attic. A pre-war bicycle, stored or abandoned, still in the building's attic. Someone rode a bicycle to that building, or stored their bicycle there, and left it when whatever happened, happened. And the bicycle has been in the attic ever since. 1,000 years of being in an attic. The rubber of the tyres presumably degraded, the chain corroded, the colour faded. But the bicycle's frame, the steel of it, is still recognisably a bicycle in an attic where a bicycle was left before the world ended. The Mushroom War Wiki's final section covers the BMO Distant Land Special in some depth. And I want to return to its key detail one more time. The visual of the explosion that created the crater, together with 2 large nuclear detonations in different parts of the planet. 3 detonations visualised in space. The crater creating explosion, and 2 others in different parts of the planet. Global. The war was everywhere, or everywhere accessible to nuclear weapons, which in the era the show implies was everywhere on Earth. Every continent with a military capable of deploying nuclear weapons experienced it. The show only shows us the North American evidence, because that's where Finn and Jake live, where Marceline grew up, where Simon and Marceline walked through the ruins. But the war's reach was global, and every continent has its own underwater cities, and its own winter-coated commuters, and its own baby shoes in icebergs. The Adventure Time world is the world after all of that. Every character in the show exists in the aftermath of a global event that the show documented in background details across 10 seasons and multiple specials. Every ruin in every background of every episode is a piece of that documentation. The arm in the tree trunk has been reaching since the first episode. The baby shoes have been in the iceberg. The commuters have been in the subway with their winter coats. The people have been on the couch. And the adventures have been happening. And the candy colours have been warm. And the music hole has been singing for 1,000 years to whoever could hear it. That's everything the show told us about the Mushroom War. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every production note and background artefact and throwaway line of dialogue, and Tumblr analysis and wiki entry and carefully reconstructed timeline. The word fission is on the bomb. The babies had shoes. The commuters had coats. The people had a couch. The world had a before, and then it had an after. And the after is, ooh, and ooh is worth protecting. That's adventure time. That's the whole thing. Thank you for being here for all of it. Subscribe if you haven't. Come back. Good night.